Welcome to the Truth About Real Estate Investing show for Canadians. Today my guest is Andrew. He's Canadian. He lives in the GTA, but he owns 20 income properties in the US. Funny enough, he's never seen any of them. He is the CEO of a tech-based real estate investment company called Share. I'll have links in the show notes. They help everyday investors build a portfolio of fully managed rental properties in landlord-friendly states in the USA. My name is Erwin Cito. I am your host, four-time Realtor of the Year to investors with somewhere north of $400 million worth of real estate transactions under our belts, 350 plus investor clients who we help execute on BRRRRs, highest and best use, positive cash flow investing. My focus has been on best practice investing ever since I started back in 2005. And in my experience, value investing, renovating for value, and investing for the long term has been the best strategy in my experience and for most people most of the time. There are lots of newer strategies that do work. They obviously require a lot more effort, such as like midterm rentals and cottage rentals. They're great for people who want to be active business owners. Numbers are tougher than ever though. And in my experience, most investors want to be as hands-off as possible. Why not? Why not earn money passively in one sleep? Just like Warren Buffett preaches. One of my clients who's been doing midterm rentals for nearly a decade, she's extremely successful at it. For example, 2 of her properties made the top 5 list for VRBO in Hamilton for top grossing properties. She has to do business development work. She has to connect with and maintain relationships with local insurance companies and local employers in order to make sure that the flow of business continues to come in. She tells me it's been tougher than ever. And that's the truth about real estate investing. She is full, but again, she hustles and she self-manages and she meets tenants to hand them the keys for her Airbnbs. Not everyone's willing to do that. Cottage investing, no different, has its challenges. Reliable cleaners and contractors are hard to come by in big cities, and they're even harder to come by in remote areas. And so, again, it is all possible with enough skill and hustle. We've had plenty of guests on the show who have done just that. Just be true to yourself, how much time and effort you're willing to invest. My point is, there is no free lunch. Do your own research, understand your own values, and seek out the truth about real estate investing. Find out what works for you. For today's guest, Andrew, he's from Brampton. He has over 20 properties south of the border. And again, he's never seen any of them. He also shared with me how wonderful his experience has been investing in entry-level income properties in the US for as little as even under $100,000 for a whole house, like a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, via a program called Section 8, which assists low-income families afford housing. For example, the government roughly pays for 70% of the rent and is paid directly to the landlord, which provides the landlord and the real estate investor, like you and I, a more reliable income stream. The cash flows from these investments are typically better than anything I've seen here in Ontario. For example, cap rates are 7 to 11%, which is better than any apartment building I've seen in many, many years. And again, these investments require way less capital, somewhere in the range of 60 to 110,000. And again, that's for a whole house. That's less than many renovation budgets, let alone down payments for a house in Canada. I've written a blog post about it. And as always, I like to share my research. I'm not an expert on the subject, but when I do see great opportunities, I like to learn everything I can about them. Links will be in the show notes and in the email newsletter. On to this week's show. Again, we have our guest today, Andrew Kim. He's got over 10 years experience investing in real estate. He started in the GTA. Didn't go so well because he was so busy. He couldn't really manage them properly. The cash flow wasn't there to afford a manager either. And then he went on to build a portfolio of 20 properties that are fully managed in a couple locations, upstate New York, Florida. I think we've all heard of Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, and Dallas, Texas. He's a serial tech entrepreneur who's worked in Silicon Valley startups and is now combining his passion for real estate investing with technology. Andrew's company combines the expertise to handpick quality investment properties for Canadians in the US, which includes writing offers, arranging ownership structuring, taxes, property management, financing partners. Yes, Canadians can get mortgages too, renovations, and setting lease rates. It honestly doesn't get more passive. And the properties do, again, they generate enough rent to pay for top-notch property management. Basically, it's living the dream, in my experience. With inflation getting out of control, rent control, the uncertainty of receiving rent here in Canada for mainly Ontario and BC investors, especially Ontario investors, I think it's advisable you give a listen to this episode. And for those who don't know, we actually sent out a survey just last week on who was interested in receiving more information on U.S. real estate investing. 92% of you said you were interested in attending a webinar or workshop on the subject of real estate investing, and we collected a whole bunch of topics. So you asked, we will deliver. We will be hosting a live in-person U.S. investing workshop on Saturday, October 21st. It's just the morning, so it's only 3 hours of your time. We will be doing this hybrid as well. So we are offering tickets for both in person. We are almost sold out of the in-person tickets. But again, we literally had folks asking from BC as well if this would be available online. So yes, if you're far away, we will make this available to you online. So again, that's Saturday, October 21st. So save the date. Check the show notes and our website for links on how to register for that event. We're charging a mere $30, and it all goes to charity. So the content's going to be incredible. We'll have Andrew and his team, including Carmen, who will be coming on this show, and also she is a CPA. She is a chartered professional accountant on both sides of the border. So we will be able to answer pretty much all your questions on structuring, taxes. And also my friend Scott Dillingham from Lend City will be coming as well, because they just announced they'll be offering mortgages to Canadians to invest for Canadian investors investing in the USA. So we're going to cover all our bases. It's just one morning of your life. You do not want to miss this, because again, 92% of you asked for this. So hopefully see you there. Again, to follow, for anyone interested in following Andrew, we do have a website for it. We do have a shared website for it. It's iwin.sharesfr.com. The SFR stands for single family rental. So again, that's iwin.sharesfr.com. And you can go there to view current and past deals. You do need to sign up, which is basically just giving your name and email address. They'll ask you where you came from. If you just say Irwin or Iwin or Truth About Real Estate Investing, they will take good care of you. Please enjoy the show. Hi, Andrew. What's keeping you busy these days?
Share. My new company, it's a venture-backed real estate company. We try to help investors, both Canadian and American, find high-yield, high-returning rental homes in the U.S. And then we take a management role, and we want to put your portfolio growth on autopilot.
So first off, I want to say thank you for your service.
I'm not military, but yeah, I'll take it.
It's just because I know where you're coming from. Like here in this business here, I Win Real Estate, we try to help the everyday investor as well. I think everyone knows our high net worth clients are the easiest to work with, because they can purchase with cash,
right,
and they can purchase many, many properties. But I still want to help that middle class person who doesn't have family help, to be able to acquire income properties.
Yeah.
And I understand your experience is no different.
Yeah, 100%.
High net worth people are way easier to work with.
Yep. Yeah, high net worth people are easier to work with. We love working with them, but our mission is really financial security by way of real estate, and that's why we got into it. It wasn't for the high net worth individual; it's for those lower to middle that are aspiring or want to target wealth for themselves and their generation after them, their kids, and they've saved up and accrued money to finally get into the real estate space. But the failure rate in this world in real estate is pretty high. The risks are high, with moderate to good returns. So we are trying our best to mitigate those risks and actually help these individuals, retail investors, everyday investors, mom and pop, DIYers, to get in safely and start building their portfolio. Like that kind of goes back to my upbringing, where it's like I wanted to get into real estate, and obviously now in Toronto, it's much harder for someone to break in. But I saved every single penny.
You're a millennial?
Yeah. Well, I'm like at the tail end, or the very beginning of the millennial, I think. or I guess that's how you put it. Yeah.
Your last name's Kim, so you must be a crazy rich Asian. Right?
Nope, not at all. I mean, I didn't come from money. Definitely not. Low income family. Actually, probably what drove me to today.
Right.
Parents had some entrepreneurial attempts, were not very successful, and
Like what? Convenience stores? And
yeah,
grocery stores?
Yep. Are you reading? Are you reading the stereotypes? But yeah, they had a convenience store. We lived.
Damn.
Yeah, they first came to Canada. They lived in Rexdale, which is a Toronto neighborhood.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and
They didn't
then
have guns pulled on them, did they?
I think my dad might have when we owned a convenience store, but I can't remember. But I remember there being like scares. But and then like they would give me this privileged kid life, like all this extracurricular, piano, sports, baseball, Kumon, all this other extra stuff, and I'm like, looking back now that I'm a parent, I'm like, where's this money coming from?
Yeah.
And yeah, like they declared bankruptcy when we were young. I remember them picking me up from like piano lessons, and there'd be duffel bags of clothes in the back seat, and I'd be like, "What's this for?" It's like just in case we get locked out of our house, like get evicted, right? And I was just like, "What? Okay, can we go to McDonald's?" And they're like, "No, we got food at home." Like, so that was. And then as you get older, and you realize that, wow, that's a lot of strife, and you'd see your parents arguing, hear your parents arguing, and you never want that to be witness of that, and ever to repeat that. So that kind of, I think, was some of my biggest drive for sure.
Right.
It's like, I want to eat McDonald's every day.
Well, he doesn't afford to eat McDonald's every day.
Exactly. I want to eat out like everybody else eats out.
Right.
Why do we always got to eat at home?
Right. And you were pretty young when you started you went to Silicon Valley. How old were you? Sorry. Your first tech startup. How old were you?
So I've been in always had my foot into some sort of business, online hustle, whatever it was. But my first real venture backed, where I have outside investors, tech company, was in 2011 was when I moved to first LA, because we were in the YouTube space and LA made more sense. We had a lot of high profile angel investors, including top executives from WME, which is a notable agency for actors, and then the COO of YouTube was also one of our angel investors. So because we were working with YouTubers, LA made sense. So we moved to LA and lived there for about 14 months.
The whole family?
So I was just married. So prior to getting married, I have my wife was my high school sweetheart, and she's known that I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. And as we got serious, she's like, "You need to stop making these big swinging for the fence attempts. Get a job, be stable. Let's buy a house, get married." So quit my first startup, and then got a job. We bought a house, and then my business partner reached out to me while on my honeymoon, and he's like, "When you get back, let's talk." And then when he got back from my honeymoon, that's when he had this idea. We started incubating it, and then it was the same year that I moved to LA and quit my job. So she was not happy. She took the risk. So newlyweds, bi-coastal husband. That was tough.
That's the first I've heard that term, bi-coastal.
Yeah.
Because you were living on the West Coast.
Yeah. My wife was in the East Coast.
Wait. Hang on. We don't have a coast here in Ontario.
Sure.
We do not. There's no ocean.
Eastern time zone.
Because I was in Victoria recently, and they call us East Coast, and okay, hang on. What ocean do we abut with?
Yeah. Fair.
But I get it.
Yeah.
Because we're pretty much in line with New York.
Yeah.
So New York is by different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
but she luckily worked from home, so she'd come out, spend 4 weeks, and go back and forth. And then she eventually got pregnant, and then that created a whole new set of variables and risk. And then we sold the company. We sold the company to a company in the Silicon Valley in the Bay Area. So had to move up there. And now that I've sold the company, I don't own my own schedule. I had to become an employee of them to earn out my stock, because it was a majority stock deal. So I had to move up there, working 6-7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, newborn that's sitting in Toronto. And, my wife in Canada has 12-month parental leave. She could spend 4 weeks here, back and forth. But it was kind of miserable. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, screw it. It's not worth it. I'll build another company. So I quit, left a bunch of stock and money on the table, and came back to Canada in late 2014, early 2015.
Damn.
Yeah. That was a
But you gotta do it for family.
yeah, exactly. It was a hard pill to swallow because it came right back in winter, and I was like, I'm never coming back here. But good thing I kept my house. Good thing, because it worked out for the better.
Amazing. And then you have been an Ontario landlord before.
Yeah. So my foray into real estate was just before moving to California, like the 2009, 2010. Read up about the Burr strategy. Started looking at houses in Ajax and Barrie, and at that time you could get something like around the 300,000 price point, foreclosed, dilapidated, put in like 20% capex. But it was work, like, oh my gosh. And like, it really only penciled if you're doing it yourself. Like, when I mean doing it, it's like self-managing. Like, there was no third-party property manager. There was no line item for that. And my math was literally on pen and paper at that point. And did that a few times. Was intentionally maybe not looking at the numbers to tell myself I'm making progress. But it wasn't until, I moved to California and I met who is my now current business partner. She's an accountant and also in the real estate space. She's the one that looked at my numbers like, this is not a good investment. If you want to do real estate, let's go look in Florida.
Right. And then just combine that with your out of town, young family. Yeah. You're busy with the business.
Yeah.
You can't be an active real estate investor.
Yeah. So I was living in California. She's like, you got to look in Florida. Like, you're here now. You have visa, your tax ID number. Like, it's just a lot easier for you now. And if you sell those properties, you could probably buy some of these cash. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, and it's like, but like, how long is it going to take for me to cash flow these things? And she's like, well, as soon as we lease it up. So it's like, well, okay, well, show me these properties. And at this time, you could buy something in Florida for $100,000, like St. Pete's, Pinellas County, like what now are nice neighborhoods for like 100, 110, double digit net yields. So I was like, let's go, let's do this.
Sorry, you could get like over 10% cash on cash return, even with the 20% down.
Yeah. Okay, it's nuts. It was nuts.
These are unicorns.
Yeah. So like, but no, these were all cash deals. From like a yield perspective, it was a very accretive opportunity. These weren't desirable neighborhoods at that time, right? But what was the bonus was that like, look, I could get a property management company skimming off my rent, and I'm still cash flow positive, which for me was just mind-boggling. Knowing my typical all-in manner, I think you're kind of the same way. It's like, oh my God, let's go. So sold my units, bought a couple houses there, a few houses, and then kind of sat back. After I sold my company, bought more. Now this was like probably my last purchase was like 2013, and then that's when I started moving to the Bay Area, worked with the company, and then came back to Canada 2014, 15.
May I ask how many properties then you own in the States?
At that point, I think I had about...
And hang on. I remember you've told me before you've never seen any of them.
I've never, ever seen
Okay. All right. Please continue. How many houses do you own?
So now I have over 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
20 houses never seen.
Yeah, never.
Okay, and how many times the tenants called you to fix something?
So earlier on, it's only ever property managers that have contacted me. I've never dealt with a tenant directly. I've never dealt with a tenant directly. It's always a property management company. But even though the economics allow for a property manager, you're still having to deal with them. And property management companies, they're on razor slim margins. So if they have to go out to a house like 2 times a month, it almost eats into that whole margin of that door. So, they don't like going out for every single thing. Right. They kind of like bundle it when they're in the neighborhood. Right. They can do that. But yeah, I would talk to property management companies probably more frequently than I would have liked.
Right. So just to clarify property management, because my experience here in Canada is it's usually like a one person, maybe husband, wife shop.
Yeah.
And they have some people they have contractors.
Right.
Like, so not people that are on staff even.
Right.
But
yeah.
what is it more like? What's the U.S.
Yeah.
What's your US experience?
And because of rental properties is a major method of wealth creation for Americans. Like, it's a $4 trillion asset class. 88% are owned by mom and pop investors that own 1 to 10 units. So the ecosystem for like sizable property managements from mom and pop property managements to large institutional ones run the gamut. Like you could throw a rock and hit 2 property management companies.
Okay, because that's not what it is like.
Yeah, so like you can, like, depends on how you want to search, but if you were to talk to your agent, they could probably refer you to 3 property management companies. So
Okay.
at that time, the property management company we had, they would be considered a small one. They had a couple hundred doors.
Okay, there's not that many around here.
Yeah,
There's a
so
couple
like that would
hundred
be a
doors.
small one, and they do what we do, which is called like scattered single family rental (SFR), and then they can move up the rungs of condos, whatever. But those would be called your mom and pop shops then, like a couple hundred. And then there's a very boutique small where it's like a contractor, but they have a software we can plug into it. I can log into their portal and take a look at things. Back then, that wasn't as readily available, but it is today for mom and pop property management companies.
So my experience with investors here in Canada is that that on the less expensive, more affordable end of the scale is like condos. Unfortunately, if they bought the last 2-3 years, they're negative cash flow 1,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
And then so like for example, in my business, we've always been more aggressive. Like so when we started back in like 2005, we bought a lot of single family homes and we could cash flow them. And then when we couldn't, we did student rentals. And then once duplexing was available, then we did those as well. Understand all these have very significant renovation budgets.
Right.
A basement suite apartment, for example, our retail price from general contractors is about $160,000, right? Because it's an invasive renovation, and that's just market for that. So these houses that you own, are they what kind of properties are they? They're apartment buildings.
They're all single family. I've got a couple duplexes in there, but like I use duplex loosely. It's like a house with base. I guess you can call it a duplex. It's top floor, main floor apartments, but majority they're all single detached homes.
Mm-hmm. And then you're Airbnb in order to make it cash flow?
No, they're all long-term rentals. They are the sort of single family. The U.S. single family is definitely long-term rental is the safest real estate asset class in the world, in my opinion. They're obviously got modest yields, and then you kind of go up the risk level. You can do short-term rentals, Airbnb, higher yields but higher risk. But in terms of plain vanilla risk and resiliency, is the single family long-term.
I just find, because I watch too much social media, is that there's all this hype behind Airbnb, but I don't know if people realize like Airbnb property managers usually take 20-30% of your rent.
Yeah.
And Airbnb takes some too.
Yeah. So like when we underwrite, like when I pencil sort of Airbnb opportunities, like, yeah, there might be some local boutique agency that will charge less, but just for the sake of the exercise, 20% on your revenue is kind of where you want to mark it off. Just like if you're kind of underwriting property management in like a mid-tier market, mid cost market in the US, like you could go with it 8% is probably a soft accuracy. Yeah.
And then the alternative, I have some friends who rented to the property management company, so they Airbnb arbitrage the lingo, but then I'm just getting regular rent.
Yeah.
And still negative cash flowing.
Yeah.
So what am I doing here?
Yeah. That's why like I it's hard to make those things pencil. And the turn rate is pretty high. The risk is higher because you got very transient tenants, right? Like you don't know if you're going to get one party in there that's just going to ruin stuff. So your R&M line needs to be a little higher. You got to be very cautious about that.
And then a lot of people don't even have proper insurance.
Yeah.
So they're understating, like oh my word, what if the insurance company doesn't pay?
Yeah. And the reason why I'm like kind of risky, but now kind of thinking about some short-term rentals is the pandemic really wanted, like it would have been really nice to have a short-term rental to kind of dip into when somewhere hot. So it's more of a personal spend, but they did take a massive hit. And, if the market goes downwards, short-term rentals, vacation, discretionary spend will go down. That's problematic for me. Like I don't like that kind of risk.
Right.
Yeah.
And then here more locally, I have some clients who are property managers for vacation rentals, and they're sharing with me that all these pre-construction projects that when the clients close on the property, they're putting them on Airbnb.
Oh, interesting.
So we have because they need higher rents in order to cash flow.
Right.
But my point is there's more supply, therefore more competition for existing Airbnb operators.
Yeah, and that's what you saw like in Arizona too. Like in Arizona and Florida, certain pockets where there's a lot of short-term rentals, they got hit hard, right?
Right.
And saturation, because you got to compete now too, right? Like you go to Kissimmee, Florida, and you kind of look on Airbnb, there's like a million of them, right?
Right.
And then when it gets hit, it's like a race to the bottom who can lower their rates faster.
My point though is that it sounds great.
Yeah.
But then when you dig a little further, like I don't like competition.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I don't like people pushing my rents down.
100%.
Also, I'm at a stage in my career I like boring because I've done enough very invasive renovations, and but yeah, let's talk a bit more about share, and because I think the opportunity today is like more important than ever. So for example, you saw my presentation that I gave to my meetup. Like property taxes are getting out of control. I don't know what Markham's going to do. So for those who don't know, Markham, like in York Region's website, they shared the notes from the budget, and they're talking about a 93% property tax increase over a 3-year period, because they're blaming Bill 23. I think there's more things because just even during the pandemic, like public transit, for example, was still running during the pandemic, but they had 10% of revenue of their typical revenue. So like I always knew the bill's coming.
Right.
And then as myself, you were an Ontario landlord. I'm a very much so an Ontario landlord. I can't pass these inflating costs to my tenants. So Hamilton's looking at a 14% property tax increase. 2 of my properties, the insurance went up $500 per year, which is about a 20% increase. And here we are in a rent control environment, and I think it's only gonna get worse. Like you were in the Toronto Star, for example, and Toronto Star they sound very landlord friendly in the articles they write. sorry, they sound very tenant friendly.
Yeah.
They call like these rent control exemptions loopholes and whatnot. The headwinds are worse than ever for an Ontario real estate investor. So naturally, let's just take a step back. When I started my real estate investing journey, I always knew the U.S. was certain parts of the U.S. were very landlord friendly. But then there were so many pieces missing for me to be able to invest down there. Financing being a massive one. Because in my experience, my friends who've bought in the States or internationally, it's all HELOC.
Right.
So basically just, if it's a $300,000 house, they took $300, whatever. They had to convert money to US from their HELOC and come out all at a HELOC. Like there was no leverage opportunities. And then all the other problems of every real estate investor knows, who do you trust finding people to find you deals? And then to me, massive risk area is the property manager. Like you need a high quality property manager in order to take care of your investment for the long term. So many people are just obsessed with the deal. Like that, you buy wrong, it can go really bad. More things can go bad over the long term.
Right.
People need to appreciate that. So that's what makes me really excited about Share. So you said it publicly. You guys do a lot. So I'm reading from the Toronto Star article. Your company promises to help with sourcing, renovating, property management, and even taxes. That's a big commitment.
Yeah. It is a very Canadian investment, as much as Canadians fear the idea of remote investing. So which is why we know kind of the pillars that we have to knock over for a Canadian to be able to invest. And then it's not just Canadians, it's out-of-state investors. So, I think Canadians from the major metros, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, all face the same issues that New York, San Francisco, Seattle, all the major metros face. They're trying to find affordable things out of state. Same problems apply where it's like I can't physically get eyeballs on there. How do I do with out-of-state taxes, cross-border taxes? It's the same problems. So we identified each of those and said, okay, well, we can build technology and process around each of them. At first, we will maybe refer you to a partner on certain parts like lending and then tax or whatever accounting might be. But for the most part, we can kind of box you into a very specific way to get from end to end. on how to get financing as a sort of a Canadian, as a foreign national, what to think about as a foreign national, and all the way to, look, let's get your 10th home as a foreign national. So we decided like that's the place we want to play. We get a lot of Americans, but like obviously as a Canadian, I have a soft spot to help my fellow Canadian to get this asset class. And I think, as risk averse as Canadians are, they need to get in here. So let's help them get in here.
If they're risk adverse, they should understand that the risks are being a BC or Ontario landlord.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's interesting.
Actually, that's a common. I asked you guys, and I asked you in a different conversation. Like for example, I literally have a property manager friend who's a professional property manager, who he unfortunately inherited a tenant, and that tenant has not paid since July last year. So even a professional tenant property manager cannot do anything about this situation. So it's now September, so it's been a year and a few months, and they still don't have their eviction notice yet. They have their judgment from the landlord tenant board, but it's been about 2-3 months, so they still don't have their eviction paperwork, so they can't get the sheriff yet.
Right.
So if people want to understand risk, like you and I have had this conversation many times. The worst case scenario is here versus the landlord friendly state in the U.S. is completely different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are probably loopholes in every single state, but that percentage of that, like somebody perfectly being able to box himself into that rare exception, is small.
Right.
Like maybe a good percent. These are just rough numbers. Actually, this is just more of a gauge, but like maybe 10% of tenants in Ontario can box themselves and are educated enough to be a squatter, right? And they know the rules, and because of the rules, they can box themselves in there. But in some of the landlord-friendly states in the U.S., those rules don't even actually apply, and maybe there's like a 0.1% of people that can actually slot themselves into the squatting exception. But we've not been faced with that exception, right? But it's not to say that there wasn't one very legal savvy tenant, but for the most part, like the common problems you face, and from what I hear from the horror stories locally in Ontario, those are like eviction worthy events in the US. And the turnaround time is just mainly administrative paperwork, and then we would proceed to the next level of evictions.
Right. So what is your experience for an eviction worthy event? How long to get your property back?
So there's a few scenarios. Pandemic was kind of a weird one, where everyone felt that they didn't have to pay. But also in the US, they released a program called ERAP. So this might muddy our data set, but ERAP was like an emergency relief fund program or something. So everyone
kind of like our version of CERB.
Yeah. So like they but this was for landlords. So tenants were like, oh, well, I'm not going to pay my lease. And then they would apply for ERAP, and then the government just gave us a check.
At least they gave it to you.
Yeah, they gave it to us.
Because here they give it to the tenant.
Yeah, but it became an administrative headache where it's like, tenant, you need to sign this document. And it became an opportunity for property managers to actually cut like a little administrative percentage off the top. But the government did reimburse us for tenants that qualify for the ERAP program. Right. But we did have like one scenario of fraud. Somebody managed to, a third-party fraudster leased out one of our homes, and a tenant moved in, and then we realized it was fraud, and we had them out in less than 60 days.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, in all other cases, we just kind of go through this procedure process. Most of it's vanilla. I would say like the longest turnaround we have, and this was probably upstate New York, and New York is not as landlord friendly as the other states we operate in. And typically 90 days is...
Yeah, I'm not investing in New York.
Yeah, and 90 days was like our turnaround time to get somebody back in, out and in.
Right.
So...
But again, I can avoid that risk by just not investing there.
Yeah.
Prevention is worth a pound of the cure.
Yeah, I would say like 30 to 60 days is sort of to get them out the door.
Right. And you're allowed to collect a security deposit in the area.
Yeah, we'll claw that. Yeah, we'll hold that back. Yeah, all of our tenants, we always kind of put up front tenant insurance and a reserve security deposit has to be there in order to come in.
Right. You know, a mentor of mine, and it also was a vision from when I was a bright and bushy guy when I first became a realtor back in 2010, was to make the process as easy as possible for the client. As in, like, you know, like kind of like choosing a combo at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's 6 options. Which one do you like?
Right.
The reality is, like, to actually execute that's not the easiest, right? Especially with prices the way they are. You know, it could be $600,000-$700,000 for a home. It could be an invasive renovation for like 6-9 months.
Yeah.
You know, if they want to do a garden suite, then a lot more cash out of pocket with, you know, hopefully a refinance in 2 years, right? So we never got to that ideal situation. Now because you're a tech company, you've actually made the process quite easy.
Yeah.
It is almost like a few clicks.
Yeah. Like, I mean, technology is great because it's an accelerant for us. So I always try to think of how we can automate people and move them through end to end. But
yeah, you're smarter than me. I know. I get
but
it.
no, not at all. But you know, what really I have to attribute to is the founding team. Right? There's 4 of us, but each of us cover a very specific part of the journey. Right? So Dimitri, he's our head of investments, comes from Starlight, one of Canada's largest private equity firms. So he brings that asset management piece. Right, so he can understand how to scale that.
How big is Starlight?
They've got, I think, $25+ billion worth of residential real estate.
Got it.
Both here in Canada and the U.S. And then Carmen, who is our CPA both sides of the border, so she handles the accounting and tax and entity formation. She knows all of that stuff. So, and then there's Brandon, who's our head of technology, and then there's me that just kind of gets to be on a podcast, right?
Right.
So the subject matter expertise is there.
Yeah.
So now it's like extraction and building a platform that allows others to tap into that expertise without having to kind of bog down the day-to-day.
As much as I enjoy our conversations, I was really excited when I met Dimitri.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, like, I'm very risk averse. I've seen many bad things happen. You know, I've been through about 5 property managers in Hamilton alone. Just fired my property manager in St. Catharines. Again, the market here is different. Property managers, in my experience here, are generally very, very small shops.
Right.
Rare that they get to 100 doors.
Okay.
Right. And I don't blame them because it's difficult. Right. If a tenant's not paying, it's hard to bill your client for property management, or even just with rent control, right? Everyone's getting squeezed,
right?
And a lot of investors have taken their properties back from property managers because they can no longer afford property management. So PMs are getting squeezed, so it's difficult business. Just like you said, like, margins are slim,
right?
So I don't fault them. It's just every property manager I find has a shelf life because it's not an easy job. Right. So, but when I met Dimitri, for example, you guys are telling me about these. You guys actually have much higher standards for who you hire for property management. Yeah. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah. So the reason why we want to be asset managers is, you know, we want to build such a aggregate portfolio for our clients that we can knock on the doors of the biggest property management companies that service typically only large institutions, because with that kind of volume and scale, they have to have certain expertise in-house on payroll. One specifically we look for is, like, do you have contractors on payroll that only take, like, 100% of their work comes from you? That way we have control over the budget and timelines, because they're the ones coming in, doing the renovation work for us. They're the ones slotting their team. So timelines are pretty critical, and same with budget. So the assumption is that if we're getting them to do the rental work, they're going to get the management contract. Now, when they get the it's in their best interest to kind of keep that budget low and then on timeline. If they don't, then we would walk. So we take those types of economies of scale and we pass that through to our clients. So that is sort of our core, where it's like we need to work with reputable property management companies that have strong practices, got a good amount of team and good number of doors in that specific geography.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is, I've never had that experience of working with an institutional level property manager.
Yeah.
And again, in my experience, not many PMs can handle renovations,
Right.
Because they don't have staff, and it's a tough business.
Yeah,
it's a tough business to be a general
real tough.
contractor.
Yeah.
Right, and then to wear two hats, both be general contractor and be property manager, and then it can be risks as well. 'Cause
Yeah.
if the GC side doesn't work out, you're over budget, you're not on time, then your vacancy is just longer.
Yeah.
Client's not gonna be happy. Tenant might be happy because you promised them that you can move in, but you're pushed out 2 months.
Yeah.
Because my experience here is, it's rare for renovations to come in on time, on budget.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough too, because like when a third party contractor comes in, they're bidding on your business and as well as 10 other businesses, and they'll take the highest bidding project, right? So all of a sudden they've ghosted you, and you now gotta hit the yellow pages, if that's still a thing, and find another contractor.
And then you also help the client up front as well to actually acquire property. Because we were talking before this meeting, is that owning property personal probably doesn't make sense to buy in the States.
Yeah. I mean, there's liability risk there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows the Americans are extremely litigious.
Right.
I don't see what anyone in their right mind would buy in their personal name.
Yeah. And for an accounting perspective, for a foreign national, we advise Canadians to set up an entity, corporation, in the respective state that they're buying, and we'll help you do that. So we've got partners to do that, so we can actually set that up for you, and then buying the house under that entity. And then you can build your credit through that entity, and then eventually that opens up a lot of doors.
How hard is it to create the entity?
Oh, it's very easy. We can set that up in under 48 hours in most states.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It's the tax ID number that takes a long time. And
Right,
it's
right.
the tax ID number you need to when you go for financing or refinancing or upon sale.
Because I spoke to one of your customers about this and doing my due diligence on you, and he mentioned how creating an entity was like, it's a lot from work.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That was a different time. Now we do it in-house. We
Okay.
were sending them to a partner and saying, go to this website, sign up here, do this. And he'd ask questions, what does it mean for these shared distributions? I'm like, yeah, now we actually do that internally.
Got it.
Through the same partner, but they've allowed us to take control of the experience.
Right.
So now, because of our sort of onboarding and all that information, we already have a lot of the information we need. So we'll just like, look, let us do it. Here it is. Answer these few questions, and we'll tell you what these questions mean, as opposed to going online and being a number.
But he was buying the property by clicking.
Yeah, he has not seen it from what I understand, and I don't think he's either driven there or visited the property either.
He told me he hasn't.
Oh, okay.
My point, though, is that traditionally to buy real estate investments is very different.
Yeah.
You gotta, again, my client typically comes from the GTA, so they're driving half hour.
Right.
So if there's no traffic,
Yeah.
If it's a Friday evening and there is traffic, yeah, exactly. And then for a large period of time, we couldn't guarantee we could still see the property, that it wouldn't sell in time.
Right.
So I literally have had clients show up like, sorry, it's sold.
Oh.
You have to go home.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, going through the deal of offering, and then the home inspection, and then getting the contractor to come in, and then you have the person come take measurements for drawings, and you're this past customer is just clicking.
Yes. Yeah, we aggregate, we put boots on the ground, so we collate all that information, convert that information into hard, cold numbers, and say, is this what you like? Is this still good for you? So we kind of remove all that risk. But, it doesn't come with some education process. It doesn't mean they can just kind of show up and click. We force them down an education funnel.
Good.
Yeah. So when you sign up and you're interested, we actually send you some of our performas or underwriting and be like, this is your homework. Read this through, write down your questions, and we're going to come back and we're going to meticulously go these lines. And so you understand how we are writing this, understand your upside, understand your downside. And when you give us the thumbs up here, then we'll start searching.
Right.
Yeah. So education is key.
Part of the education, I think, that's incredibly important as well, because this came, I've asked you many times, who owns the property? Because my understanding is, just correct me if I'm wrong, is I own the property.
Correct.
No one else owns the property. This isn't fractional.
No.
This isn't shares of a private equity or a REIT.
No.
I own it.
It's your direct ownership. You keep 100% of your upside. Our goal is to stretch that upside.
And
So
I can move into it if I wanted to.
yeah, if you wanted to, you could totally move in. Obviously we'd have to go through the procedures, but that's not a difficult thing. Yeah.
It's pretty difficult here these days with tenanted properties if you want to move in.
Right. I feel like that is one of the most clear-cut ways to get a tenant out. Like, I'm going to move in.
But I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I love Canada. I couldn't just personally I don't want to own a vacation property. I just don't want to be pigeonholed into one place. So it's not, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
My point is I have that level of control.
Correct.
Right, which in my opinion is the proper way to invest. Heavy education, you control the asset. Because if anyone doesn't believe me, just keep following the news on who loses money investing in real estate.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of private lenders are getting whacked. It's all over Twitter. Tons of private lenders are getting whacked.
Yep.
Like their capital's gone.
Yeah.
Right. But I control the asset.
Right.
So I can do whatever I want.
Exactly.
Right. Actually, I never asked this before. Could I just use share for the acquisition, and then I do everything I want after?
You could. We do have a lockup period for our management fee.
Right.
But again, it's your property. If you decide to walk, we would just ask that you prorate our management fee for the lockup period. That lockup period could be anywhere from 12 to 24 months.
Right.
But yeah, it's your property. You
Right.
can do what you want. Fire us. It's your choice. Yeah.
But it's not something I would recommend, obviously, because most of your clients do not see the property.
We've never actually turned over a client. They're still with us, and in fact, I think majority of our clients, over 50% of them, are ready to buy another one or have already bought another one.
Because I think the analogy would be like, I can get discounts at Costco if I tried to be my own Costco.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
I just need to buy pallets of mayonnaise.
Yeah.
And then I can get the same price.
Yeah.
That's kind of,
Yeah.
that's a Costco.
Yeah. You could totally I think the disservice you would be doing, and we should probably do the math on this, is that if you take the property and run, you may lose some of the economies of scales we've provided.
Yes.
Right, like the discounted PM, the discounted landlord insurance policy, because we can't keep you on our master policy, so you'd have to go direct. So those cost savings will not be realized after. But yeah, again, it's yours. You can fire us. You don't like us. That's completely up to you.
The client experience sounds incredibly impressive again, because again, I can buy property based by clicking. You'll guide me through the process of creating a U.S. entity. You almost serve the function of a mortgage broker in putting me in place with and shopping your client to several mortgage companies.
Yep.
To get them the best possible deal. You quarterback the renovations. And the property manager filling the property, long-term management. And you even advise clients when to be refinancing.
Yeah. So right now, especially now, we'll put those in the models up front. Be like, hey, look, this is the current rate. We'll watch like the overnight rate of renting, different sort of treasury like graphs, whatever, and we'll say maybe in 2 years, let's model out what this might look like at a refinancing, so you can get a better assessment on a more improved cash flow. We do that. We want to put everything all encompassing, your financing, your lending rate, make sure whatever your capital you're bringing to the table, we want to know what kind of, if it's interest bearing or not, and we'll put that into the model.
Speaking of financing, what are typical terms you're seeing today?
Yeah, anywhere from mid 7s to mid 8s. It depends on sort of the house, your down payment size, and how invasive you want to get in the credit check.
So say for someone like myself and many of my clients, they'll likely, let's do two scenarios. Let's do a scenario where someone's coming with some cash, because I have a number of clients who are exiting here just to take profits. Like they're not worried about, like, everything points to real estate prices going up more here in Ontario and Canada in general, right? So, but again, they still want to take profits, pay down some debt. I imagine many of them will be interested in this as well, for all the lovely reasons of investing in a landlord-friendly place with strong economic fundamentals. So let's assume like someone with like 25 or 30% down payment in cash, and they're buying. You tell me.
Okay.
What?
So let's say you're coming with 25% down. You got excellent credit. Let's say 720 plus assumed credit. The house has got in a great rental demand area. where the debt to service cover ratio is really good, then I would say mid sevens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's a 30-year fixed, no prepayment penalties. So that's what we'll say, okay, we'll lock that in because we can actually make that deal pencil, cash flow positive, once a tenant's in there.
Right.
And then, yeah, we'll refinance that probably in 2 years.
Right. So no penalty at all to refinance?
Yeah, you can open balloons. Yeah, that's an American very common thing. It's like a 30-year fixed sort of term. So it's easier to do the math on that one.
Right.
From a cash flow perspective. Yeah.
So I actually did educate myself on this, on U.S. mortgages, because like people tell me about it. I didn't really understand. It's, oh yeah, 30-year amortization. I get it.
Yeah.
But there's no, that is the term of the mortgage.
Yep.
So it could be like 7.5% for the entire 30 years.
Yes. Yeah. Amortized. I mean, you could still like,
if you want.
I won't. Yeah, if you want. Like, there's so many. I think what we don't realize, and in the U.S. there are so many different versions of this. Yeah. So you get a 5-year term, 2-year term, 3-year term, but 30-year amortization. Like and then there's like step down fees, different yield maintenance. So I would say like you can get up to like a 30-year term, but there's also short terms like 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, whatever, with 30-year amortization, but fixed. So yeah, I can't speak for the broad nation because again, you can walk down the street and get 50 versions of this.
Right.
But 30-year amortization is a thing, fixed. Terms could be different. Prepayment penalties. Actually, one thing is pretty common is like no prepayment penalties is a thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's why refinancing is so much easier.
Because here refinance, we typically have to pay 3 months interest.
Yeah. There's no prepayment. Majority of them don't have prepayment penalties. They might have a step down so that you can lock in for longer.
Right.
But again, those are sort of the unique flavors when you go lender to lender.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. It's easy to do the math there, right? And it's great when rates are low and everyone's competing against each other. Everyone's competing against each other right now. So.
Right. Because the truth of real estate investing here is, like, I think the best options for investing locally are garden suites and student rentals. Neither appraise easily. Right. All right. Okay, so I can get like 7.5. I can cash flow, and I don't mind sharing my credit.
Yeah.
Right. If anything, if it gets me a better rate,
it'll get you a better rate for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, because these loans, they're meant to be non-invasive, sort of like non-credit check invasive processes. They underwrite the house essentially.
So it's much like a commercial mortgage here.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like they want to see that the rental income can exceed all your debt, and that personally, that if you're a shortfall, you can personally cover that delta.
Interesting, because here in Canada, you typically have to be 4 to 6 units at a minimum in order to qualify just on the property.
Gotcha.
But even still, if it's like many times, they'll still want a personal guarantee,
right?
Or to tie it to one of your corporations, that has assets.
Yeah, and I believe like even if you were to buy like investment like residential here, the big banks kind of limit you on how many you can buy with. But in the U.S. with these DSCR loans, you can kind of do them over and over and over as long as the asset's a well-performing asset. Yeah.
Well, the reality is here in Canada, it's really hard to own 5 income properties.
Right.
It's just a lot of capital.
Right? Yes.
And then the challenge of having enough cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So it's rare that anyone runs up against that 10 property limit.
Yeah.
If you can run into that 10 property limit, let me know.
Congratulations.
You're already even in the past before the pandemic, you were very rare. I think you were maybe 1% of the market that you could get to 10 properties.
Right.
More, I think that number went up to like 2.5 maybe during the pandemic, just because prices went up so much. People got so rich. But I digress. Great rental demand areas that cash flow. Can you give me like what are your top 3?
Yeah, I would say the states wise, we love Texas, Georgia, Tennessee. Starting to look into sort of Midwest. We like Ohio, Missouri. Florida's always been up there, but there's some headwinds there.
Yeah, because you own there, so you experience it yourself.
Yeah, so the insurance rates are starting to tick up. It's still a great investment spot. It's just with climate change and insurance rates, it's kind of questionable.
Yeah, because I've had people on the show who who deliberately chose something in the last 3 years in Florida because it never got hit by hurricanes.
Right.
And then those are always famous last words. Whenever you use the word never. And then I have one friend, bought in Cape Coral. They lost I think like 80% of the shingles off the roof during the hurricane, so the house flooded from the top down.
Oh my gosh.
And this is just after they renovated. Right. They were just waiting. They were at a stage. They were just waiting for the cleaners. Because the house was already renovated. They're just waiting for the cleaners to have the furniture delivered.
Right.
So it had already just been completely renovated.
Oh my gosh.
But like the storm was that bad to knock off that many shingles that it made your house permeable.
Right.
So a flood from the roof down to the basement. So another gut job.
Yeah.
Right. So me personally, as much as I love Florida, I'd be very cautious because again, I'm risk adverse. I need to know somewhere I can always get insurance.
Yeah. No insurance, no mortgage, right? So.
Yeah. And then mortgages are inflating.
Yeah.
Across the states. I've done some research in the states too. I know a couple of the major insurers. I believe they reduced half their portfolio in
Florida.
In Florida over the last few years, and that seems to be a trend.
Yeah, they're starting to pull back because they don't know what's going to happen to that state and some neighboring states because of, again, climate change. Dimitri, my head of investments, is the best one to talk about this because he gets more intimately in tune with that from a sort of institutional level. But my understanding is there are big notable insurers that have openly stated that Florida is an area of question for them.
Yeah.
But then the counter argument I always hear is well, that opens up the opportunity for other insurers. I'm like, well, how big are these insurers, and who's to say that they're just not going to disappear?
Right.
So it's touch and go. If a client really is adamant about Florida, we'll help you source there, but and we'll keep a pulse on it. I think we want to kind of also project insurance rates as well. That's kind of our forecasting is some of our forte, so insurance taxes, but we'll kind of keep a pulse on that.
Right.
But we want to educate them, and we'll give them the sort of same sentiment as we are talking about now, and if they still want to move forward, then we'll let them.
Because in my research, I believe the insurer with the largest market share, at about 15%, and they're the fastest growing, is a state-backed insurance company.
Right.
Backed by the state of Florida. So
Yeah.
Backed by the taxpayer of Florida.
Yeah, and I think that was a byproduct of their insurance pulling out. But again, don't quote me on that. That was more of a Dimitri question. But I think that was a byproduct of other insurers pulling out.
Red flag. To me, it's a complete red flag.
They have to back their own. Yeah. Exactly.
I can't. I'm not. That's too much. That's too much of a red flag for me.
Right.
Because I have almost all my properties have basements. So whenever we get one of those 100-year storms that keep coming, I worry about my basements.
Right.
Right. So I've had enough worry in my life. I don't want to every time I hear about a hurricane coming to Florida, I don't want to be Googling and researching to see if it's coming near my property.
Right.
That's me personally. So I'm down to invest in areas where things make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So what about Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee? What do they have in common that makes sense?
Yeah. So the reason why we like Texas and we like Dallas a lot. I mean, those, like you mentioned, economic fundamentals, growing population, job growth, household income, unemployment rate. We look at all of those factors. We plug into several hundred data points. So we like them because, they're great for, they run the gamut. They have anywhere from, your institutional grade class A, these are low risk homes in very nice neighborhoods, to the tertiary markets where you're looking at higher yield and lower price points. So they've got a good array of those, both areas. But I would say Dallas and most of pockets of Atlanta, they got a lot of great A and B product. And that's where a lot of institutions are buying up in droves. They're buying a lot of homes because they know it's very a good rental demand, appreciation. Same with Atlanta. Atlanta's home to a bunch of Fortune 500 companies. It's a growing population. You could buy something that's 2,000 build, 1,500 square feet for under 300,000. So great product there. So yeah, it's close to major metro. it's like a bunch of Hamiltons, right? Like it's a good city, great economics, good job growth. It's got all the right factors.
All these are a lot bigger.
Yeah.
I saw Atlanta's greater area is about 6.1 million.
Yeah, yeah, like Atlanta proper, I think. Yeah, it's about 400,000, but like the whole surrounding area. Yeah. There's such nice pockets there, and you know, as much as institutions kind of affect owner occupancy inventory because they're buying up for rental, there's some benefit there for other investors because you know they can help boost the rental rates and stuff like that, and they tend to keep a good upkeep of their homes. So those are all positive opportunities for other investors to sort of leverage and piggyback.
Right. Can you give a range of price points for these A, B, and C class properties?
Yeah, so we go from anywhere from $50,000 homes, which would be like the tertiary
condo parking lot,
C,
parking spot,
the C class homes to up to like let's call it 400,000 for A class homes. And how you want to think about it is the A class homes have modest to low cap rates, so we would look at the pencil those deals to kind of break even, but they've got pretty aggressive equity appreciation year over year, and less tenant turnover. Some of the cost lines are a lot lower, like the allocation for R&M and vacancy are probably lower, and then on the C side, lower price point, lower appreciation, but higher yields, cash yields, and higher risk too. So it's not to say we favor one or the other. I think a well-diversified portfolio should actually be a spread across that. And having good cash yield, sitting on that cash and reinvesting it into the A, it's a great cycle. Or even, you know, refinancing and buying cash flow heavy homes is, you know, a good opportunity too. So yeah, a well-diversified portfolio, you should run the gamut. Each state has their A to C's, but they also have their sort of microeconomic factors. So that's why on our platform, we're like, it's a good idea to diversify across states, right? B's here, B's there, B's across Sunbelt,
right.
Midwest, yeah.
In case a red state becomes a blue state. No,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into politics.
Or if a hurricane just all of a sudden pops up out of nowhere. No,
Yeah, tornado, but again, like, this all sounds great. Anything else I haven't asked? We're running out of time, so anything else I should have asked? You want to share? Oh, question I wanted to ask is, why single family rentals?
Right. Yeah. So single family rentals are like after the '08 mortgage crisis, they became quite popularized and known as like a very safe and resilient asset class. The reason institutions haven't touched it is because it's kind of hard to operationalize because you have scattered. That's why they prefer multifamily condos. But single family rentals strictly because of the resiliency of it. You know, in the up market, the price point typically goes up. And then in down market, rental demand goes up. So your rental rates can go up. And because of specifically long-term rental, not short-term. So that way you get people signing longer leases. You can have a dependable, repeatable monthly income to ride out down cycles. And then in up cycles, you know, obviously you've got accelerating vehicles like refinancing opportunities and stuff like that to replicate. So after the '08 mortgage crisis, institutions realized how resilient this asset class was, and they started entering on droves. And it is still one of the most resilient ones. And what makes them resilient is not just like, okay, it's a single detached home, it could be anywhere. No, it's a certain surrounding set of, again, economic fundamentals where you want to be outside of major metros, certain radius, drive time, rental demand, percentage of home owner occupant versus renters. These are all factors that go into the classification of an SFR, single family rental.
Awesome, Andrew. And then I always have to give my guests a chance to share. Is there anything you want us to share about anything today without me prompting you?
Yeah, like I think a lot of questions, a lot of hesitation people get is like, do we buy now or do we wait for later? And I've always been a strong proponent of like, look, single family rentals is a 10 to 15 year hold minimum. Like that's how you want to look at it. Timing the bottom is impossible and supply is dwindling. We are constantly bidding against institutions. So that's a big, like you can Google like funds deploying more capital and they're, a few months ago, Blackstone just announced, along with a KKR or something, that they've raised another $110 billion to deploy in single-family rental homes. So if you can pencil a deal today to be cash flow positive, everything kind of goes up. Like, everything improves over time as interest rates kind of subside. So you've seen the worst case scenario. Right. So lock in your assets, buy them now, because in 10 years it's always the same sob stories. Like, I wish I would have bought more. I wish I would have bought. I wish I would have bought. Yeah. But yeah, so if you can make a deal pencil today, snatch it up, secure it, and then ride it out. Right. And that's what we're seeing. We see savvy investors still buying deals.
And inflation doesn't matter as much there.
Yeah, this is a great inflation hedge. This is a very good inflation hedge, because the rent control piece, we can raise rents, and we typically pick markets where the rental demand is strong. So yeah, rent rates have gone up, and that's why they say the SFR is a great inflation hedge. Right.
Which is when I've seen many pro formas. So when I saw yours and I see the cash flow goes up every month, every year, I'm like, what's up with this?
Yeah.
Wait, the rents are going up every year. And so like the year 10 cash flow numbers are sick.
Yeah, and like those are modest numbers too. Like Dimitri's quite conservative. Like, I've seen some way more aggressive, and we actually peg our underwriting against everyone else's, and oftentimes our cap rates are about 1% to 1.5% lower than everyone else's, just strictly because of the conservative nature of it.
But the pro formas I've looked at, you can basically cash flow day one.
Yes.
And one example is I could cash flow $800 a month in year 10.
Yeah, we'll never recommend, like, our starting point is cash flow positive. It doesn't start in any other scenario for us. It doesn't make sense.
Amazing. Andrew, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, my pleasure.
Do you remember the iWin landing page offhand?
Yes, it's iwin.sharesfr, singlefamilyrental.com. Again, that's iwin.sharesfr.com.
And I'll have that in the show notes, folks. Thank you for remembering.
No problem. I got you.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link's also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.